You've probably procrastinated playing video games at least a few times when you knew you had some deadline that you were working towards. So if you've ever played a video game, you know that there are stats like health, magic, damage, etc. What if I told you learning a language was actually similar to playing a video game in that there's actually stats that you can work on? You start off low and then over time you basically raise your stats to become better in the game, and you're able to do more stuff to improve your ability as a speaker and just be a higher level overall. And it's exactly the same in a lot of areas of life, including language learning. That's what we're going to talk about in this video. So hit the subscribe button and stick around until the end for a bonus tip on productivity that most people don't know. When it comes to language learning, there are basically 4 main skills that we can level up: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. When you start off learning a language, you basically start at 0 because you have no skill whatsoever in any of these categories. And what we're basically trying to work on is to improve all of our abilities to the point where we're at least conversational or more advanced. If you think about it, native speakers like you in English, for example, have a very high level in all of these skills, and that's essentially what we're trying to work towards. So the question is simple: how do we boost our stats to become better in the language we're learning? The first thing you need to understand is that for each of these skills, there are specific things you can do to become better at them. Just like in a video game, there are ways to improve each individual stat. Let's start with listening. To improve our listening skill, we basically want to expose ourselves as much as possible to the language that we're learning. So things you can listen to, for example, are vlogs, podcasts, audiobooks. You can have subtitles in front of you to help you as well. And literally just, even if you don't understand every word that's being said, listening to it over time is actually improving your ability to understand it slowly. And you will realize this after you've done hours and hours of it. Another thing to note is there's a difference between active and passive listening. So even if you're not completely focusing on it, like for example, if you're driving or exercising, you can still have something on in the background that you're listening to. Maybe it's a podcast in a language, and it is actually improving your ability to listen to it, even though you're not intently focusing on it just through exposure. There's also 2 ways to read as well: intensively and extensively. When it comes to reading, a lot of people try and read intensively in a foreign language, and they find it really frustrating because they can't understand every word they understand. Intensive reading basically means focusing on every single word and kind of analytically picking apart, etc. And that can be really, really frustrating when you don't actually understand all the words. So what I'd recommend is that you actually try extensively reading, which is where you basically grab a book in a foreign language, go on right here, and you basically read through it regardless of whether or not you understand all of the words, and you just kind of go over a page. And then if you want, you can go back and read it intensively, make a list of all the words you don't understand, etc. But it's best to just actually try reading extensively. Reading extensively, however, is great for enjoyment. It's great before bed to put you to sleep, and it is actually improving your ability to understand the language through immersion. Even if you don't fully understand every word, your brain is constantly recognizing patterns, it's recognizing grammar rules, it's making connections, etc. And if you don't read, you will find you're actually handicapping your progress more than necessary. If you do want to learn words, I would recommend doing some intensive reading. So what you can do is you can get a page of a book and you can go through and make a list of all the words you don't know, put them into flashcards, memorize them, and then come back and reread the page, and you'll find you should have a better understanding of what is going on. You can also take full sentences or phrases out of the page and put those into flashcards. We call that memorizing in context, and it's super useful for actually making connections with words that don't easily translate into your native language. Writing is also simple. I'd recommend journaling a couple times a week. If you want, you can do it with Google Translate to help you if you don't understand words you want to write down, or you can just try and write it down, and it'll be kind of satisfying over time looking back and seeing how bad you were at journaling at the start compared to how good you are now. Finally, speaking is the hardest. Not only do people find it the hardest, but it's also generally the hardest to practice if you don't have a teacher. But there are a few things you can do. Obviously, talking to a native speaker is number one, whether you can talk to someone in real life or hire someone on a website like italki. But if you can't do that, I'd highly recommend you actually record yourself speaking in the language you're learning. Yes, it's kind of painful. I hate recording myself as well, but it does actually really help with becoming better at the language. So you can literally grab your phone, you can write down a paragraph in the language, you can say it to the phone, and then watch yourself back, and you will find that you can actually pick up on a few things you're doing incorrectly and improve your pronunciation over time. You can also try and find a free community, like for example my Discord, which is in the description, where you can practice. You can find a partner who's also learning the language, and you can practice speaking the language and sending it to each other. Overall, boosting your stats in a language is a process that takes time, but it is certainly doable if you're willing to invest the time and effort. And just remember, there's no need to be frustrated because, like we said at the start, you're literally starting off at 0 and slowly increasing your stats up to the level that native speakers are at. Just stay consistent, identify your weaknesses, and work to change it over time. Now for my secret for productivity. So there is actually a fifth stat that we haven't mentioned, because it's not an actual macro skill of language learning, and I call it focus. I think most people have terrible focus when it comes to anything these days, and if you can improve your focus, you can actually learn much faster than before. If we think about it, your brain is kind of sponge-like in that it retains information like water, and when you have terrible focus, your brain isn't able to retain as much new information as you would like. So if you can improve your focus, you'll find when you're actually encountering new words in a language, you'll be able to memorize them like so much more easily. A couple of things you can do to boost your focus include cutting down on short form content and high stem social media. So for me, I generally, this is kind of me admitting to stuff, I used to not watch as much kind of rubbish content. It kind of happens a bit more now that I'm actually on social media much more, and I'm trying to cut back on it. But I do notice that when I do go through stages of watching a lot of short form content, it actually does kind of destroy my attention span, and I actually find it more difficult to learn words in Russian. That's the language I'm learning at the moment. So I'd highly recommend, if you can, try and cut back on short form content to maybe one part of the day. Like for me, for example, I try and only watch it before I'm hitting the gym, because if it like is something that motivates me, then I'm going to get a better workout. But yeah, just little things like that, reducing the amount of social media you're consuming to certain parts of the day, cutting back on terrible food as well. That is also great for your focus. You'll find if you're eating just absolute trash junk food, etc., it actually does interfere with your concentration. Like if you try eating healthy for a few days, you will actually notice when you go back to try like eating some unhealthy things that you just can't focus anymore. And yeah, make sure you're getting 8 hours of sleep as well. Nobody does that, but you should, or I'll find you. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to subscribe. Check out some links in the description. I've got a link to my course, The Language Learning Accelerator, for beginners looking to learn a language. Thank you for watching. Have a good one.